Serving as an upgrade to the ever-iconic Tsapho Behemoth, this particular monster is an upgrade not just in power, but also in armor. It is BHM01 Tsapho Behemoth, with a kit of Buff Trap, Meteor, Wide Break, Tank Legs, and the leg ability of Haja, which grants the stat cleanse effect to self when charging Metaphors. Now again, as a direct upgrade to Tsapho Behemoth, who we have had for a while, as not only enemy NPCs, but also as a previous event reward, it is kind of very obvious that he set the precedent for just kind of what to expect of his design, being it with heavy armor and heavy punish on top of that. Tsapho Behemoth, on the other hand, takes that and kind of puts his own spin on it, focusing again, much like his predecessor, on long-range combat and heavy armor, but instead making his approach more aggressive while he's on the field. Buff Trap on the head is a setup-based skill that, while active, basically is effect clear but as a passive-aggressive trap instead of an outright skill. That means that while Buff Trap is on the field, any enemies that do trigger it will be checked for any positive buffs in play. Then, for the number of buffs they have, will be damaged relative to the number they have, and then also remove all of them. This includes Shoot Boost, Mobile Boost, Stat Cleanse, Conceal, Stealth, or so on. That does mean if it's a positive buff and it's caught and triggered, it will be removed and then punished for having it. This makes it very good for passive aggression and coverage on the field to guarantee or even dissuade the enemy team from using buffs, as it does mean they will be punished just for having them on them. Meteor on the right arm is a skill we have not seen too terribly often, but it's still a very dangerous skill if in the right hands. But it is a gunpowder-based skill, which puts it in the same family as Missile, Napalm, and Hyper Missile, but upon attacking the target with a rain of hellfire from above, it will set the user on fire with a damage over time effect while active. However, in addition to while being set on fire, for every consecutive use of Meteor while with that effect in place, it does also increase your damage of Meteor by times 1.5. Very similarly to, say, Power Rifle or Mega or Giga Gatling, which also have conditional damage buffs like that. So even though it does mean that it does cost you to put an ailment on yourself, it can pay itself back with the damage you'd be dealing over time, just for the sake of having it on the field. Wide Break on the left arm is a skill we've just started seeing more and more popularly in recent, but simply explained, it is Break, which is another gravity attribute skill, but instead of pierce damage, it is a full AoE skill. And as always, like any other gravity attribute skill, this is always going to be a very well sought after part to make use of, as gravity and heavy punish you can never ever go wrong with having. Now, even though with Wide Break you may not break anything a lot, even if you are fighting someone with a full triple heavy kit, it does mean that it will make someone who comes behind him a lot easier of a time to finish the job if he doesn't do it himself. Tank Legs means that he will be very solid in the damage reduction department across the board, even if it does cost him very low mobility and the complete inability to dodge attacks as a whole. But when it comes to that, he honestly does make it moderately forgivable to a point, depending on how you choose to use him. In the armor department, he is packing a very healthy armor pool, with a head at 3600 and non-heavy at that. Both arms at 4k each, and the legs at 4650 means he's most certainly packing a very healthy HP pool, as expected of a tank-legged model like himself. And being tank means that you can use them on pretty much any terrain across the board with no real drawback or benefit to using them, so pretty much kind of like a perfect middle ground if you do have to use them. With a melee resist of 1635 and a shoot resist of 1710, definitely got the armor department down pat and the damage reduction on top of that. And that's also not even touching on the passive 30% he's getting on top of all this, just for being used as a tank-legged model. All this being said, though, as a pure set score, I still do have to rate him kind of a 6.5 out of 10, primarily for the reason that even though he is a very aggressive long-range kit, or even as a coverage type with Buff Trap, his coverage is kind of all over the place, though. Buff Trap is most certainly great to have, you can never go wrong with it, same thing with Wide Break, but Meteor's kind of that odd card there, and especially given the fact that his tank legs have the ability of Haja, which will remove any negative ailments from himself anytime he charges Metaforce. In some cases, I do kind of see that as rather counterintuitive, as it does mean that if he does have to cleanse ailments from himself, he does sacrifice his own damage bonus for doing so, and he has to reset it just to get that bonus back. Plus, again, being tank-legged does also mean he's most certainly not going to be packing a lot of speed or high evade. Well, evade at all, if I'm being completely honest. But despite that, he can cover it moderately well with the high armor, damage reduction, and the passives he gets on top of that. That being said, as mixed parts, I do very easily have to rate him about equal also at a 6.5 out of 10. Given that even though his parts as a pure set are kind of all over the place, mixing the parts up can most certainly change up the game, and even then, there are still some other options depending on what you're going for. Buff Trap, non-heavy at that, you can fit pretty much anywhere very easily, so that is a very versatile part you could use elsewhere. His tank legs can be put to very good use as well, especially with the high with the high damage reduction and the stackable, the triple heavy limit, of course, as expected on any other tank leg, and the Haja-like ability to keep ailments off of him personally do give you just a little bit of coverage there. But having Meteor and Wide Break both as heavy parts may make using him a little weird, because we do already have non-heavy versions of both of these already available to us in-game, and there really isn't much of a reason to use Tsapho Behemoth's parts over anyone else if you do decide to mix them up.